A frequent requirement for developers is to execute a particular block of code once an application is started. This can be necessary to perform some notifications or execute specific logic for the application. In this lesson, we'll take a look at Spring Boot's application runner and command line runner interfaces, which will allow us to execute code upon the startup of a Spring Boot application. These interfaces allow us to register hooks into Spring Boot's startup procedure. To get started, we're going to create a new class within our com.o'reilly.boot package. So simply hit Control N to open the new dialog and type class and then select a Java class. We're going to name this class My Command Line Runner, and we'll want to implement the command line runner interface provided by Spring Boot. So just select the command line runner interface and hit OK. And now that we've defined that interface, we can hit Finish. Within the class, the first thing we need to do is add the component annotation so that this class is discovered by component scanning and made into a bean. Now we can provide the specifics of our run method, and we can provide some implementation here. We're going to keep it really simple. You'll see that the method provides a varargs string. So this is going to contain all of the program arguments that are passed into the application. So let's just write out to the console, these are the arguments used to start the app. And then below that, we can iterate through each of those arguments. So it's going to be a string, we'll name it arg, and then for each argument, and then we can print out the particular argument. So this is going to execute when our Spring Boot application begins to start up. Normally, you would have a little bit more application specific logic here. Maybe you'll send an email or something. You'll maybe populate some values and maybe some configuration files. Really, the possibilities are limitless here. Just to add to our demonstration, let's go ahead and add some arguments to the run configuration. So this can be anything and just give it a value of something. And what we'll see is that when we start up our application, we'll now see that our logic will be executed. So there we see these are the arguments used to start the app, and we see the arguments printed out within our console. And that's all because we created this command line runner bean, which provides an implementation of the run method that is tied into Spring Boot's startup procedure. Now let's do the same thing for the application runner interface. So we're going to create a new class, and we'll name this class My Application Runner. And then we click on the Add Interface button, and we select the application runner interface and hit finish. And you'll notice this is very similar to the command line runner. The only difference is that instead of receiving the raw arguments as a string that were passed to our application, we now get them via this application arguments object. We do need to register this class as a bean, and at this point I'm actually going to go deregister our other class so we don't get confused. And now we can provide our implementation for this class, and it's going to be very similar to our last implementation. So these are the args for the application, and now we can just iterate. Let's just go through all of the option names. So we'll grab all the option names, we'll get them as a string, and we can print them out. So you would have those options available to you when running your startup logic if you needed to make some sort of determination based upon them. So with this in place, we can relaunch our Spring Boot app, and let's head over to our console. And there we see the nice ASCII art. And then we see these are the args for the application, and once again we print out those arguments. And that's all made possible by the application runner interface and how it ties in with Spring Boot's startup procedures. So that's pretty simple stuff. Define an interface, implement it, register it as a bean, and Spring will do the rest of the work. We've seen that pattern in the past. Now, the other thing I'd like to take a look at is these application arguments, and these can be passed in and injected into any of our beans. So if we navigate over to the application, we can auto wire a field of type application arguments, and that will be available for dependency injection within any bean, and then we will print out the value of one of the arguments or the name of one of the arguments. So let's just use the arguments. And what we can do is we can get the option names and we can just grab the first program argument and we'll return that from our REST API. So it's kind of nonsensical, but it demonstrates our point. So let's relaunch the application. And what you'll see now is if we navigate to a browser, we can hit our localhost and we now print out your lucky number is one of our program arguments. Not a very lucky number. But what you can see from this demonstration is that we were able to inject the application arguments and then we were able to use those arguments within our REST controller. And just know that those application arguments, as useful or unuseful as they may be, are available for auto wiring throughout your application. So in this lesson, we took a look at two approaches to executing code when a Spring Boot application starts, and that's the application runner, which provides us with the application arguments via a run method we provide the implementation for, and the command line runner, which provides us with the program arguments as a var args string. Either approach works, and you can use whichever one you would prefer.